Alternate dimensions. Every Pennywise form exists simultaneously in parallel realities. This theory proposes that when the losers encounter different manifestations of the clown throughout It and It Chapter 2, they're not just seeing one entity changing shapes, but glimpsing Pennywise across multiple dimensions where it's hunting different versions of themselves. Supporters point to moments where the clown appears to exist in two places at once, or when its behavior seems inconsistent with previous encounters. In the house on Neibolt Street, multiple losers see different things in different rooms simultaneously, suggesting Pennywise operates across dimensional boundaries. The theory explains why defeating It seems impossible, because destroying one manifestation might only eliminate that dimension's version while others continue existing. This connects to quantum theory and the many worlds interpretation, where every decision creates branching realities. If true, it means the loser's victory might only save their specific timeline, while countless other versions of themselves remain trapped fighting endless versions of Pennywise. The Kissing Bridge. The Kissing Bridge is a supernatural boundary marker, rather than just a teenage hangout spot. Throughout both It films, this wooden bridge covered in carved initials appears during crucial moments, and fans theorize it holds protective power against Pennywise. The practice of carving names and initials might unknowingly create binding contracts or declarations of existence that help resist It's influence. In indigenous traditions, marking territory and declaring names holds spiritual significance, and the bridge might sit on land that was once ceremonially protected. Ben carves his and Beverly's initials there, and later, the adult losers discover Richie carved his and Eddie's names. The theory suggests these carvings anchor the losers to reality and to each other, creating psychic links that Pennywise cannot fully break. The bridge spans water, traditionally a barrier against evil spirits in folklore, and its location between Derry proper and the Barrens might mark a threshold between normal reality and its territory. When the losers gather there, they're unconsciously seeking protection from a space that generations of Derry teenagers have imbued with emotional significance. Bob Gray identity. Pennywise the dancing clown was a real person it killed and replaced in the early 20th century. This disturbing theory examines evidence suggesting Bob Gray was an actual entertainer whose identity the entity stole and has been wearing ever since. In the novel, it occasionally refers to itself as Bob Gray when speaking to adults, and the name appears connected to Derry's history. The movies hint at this through period photographs and Pennywise's outdated Victorian-era clown costume, which doesn't match modern clown aesthetics. The theory proposes that it learned human behavior by consuming Bob Gray completely, absorbing not just his appearance, but his memories, personality, and understanding of how to interact with children. This explains Pennywise's specific mannerisms, his theatrical speech patterns, and his outdated references. If true, it means the clown persona isn't just a disguise, but a ghost, the remnant of a real person trapped inside its cosmic horror. Some versions suggest Bob Gray's consciousness still exists somewhere within the entity, screaming silently while Pennywise puppets his stolen identity to lure children to their deaths. The Neibolt House. The Neibolt House at 29 Neibolt Street exists in multiple timelines simultaneously, serving as a physical anchor point for its presence in our dimension. Fans have analyzed how the house's interior is geometrically impossible, with rooms that shouldn't fit within its exterior dimensions and hallways that loop back on themselves. In the first film, the losers enter through the front door and encounter a layout that changes depending on who's looking. Eddie finds himself in a completely different room than where he entered. The furniture appears from multiple time periods simultaneously, Victorian alongside 1980s decay. The theory suggests the house exists at a weak point in reality where dimensional barriers are thin, allowing Pennywise to manipulate space and time within its walls. This explains why the house has been abandoned for decades, despite prime real estate location, why it survived fires and demolition attempts referenced in Derry's history, and why entering it feels like stepping into another world. The well in the basement might be the original point where it entered our reality, making the entire structure a kind of dimensional gateway. Every version of the house across time exists simultaneously inside, which is why characters encounter both fresh decay and ancient rot in the same spaces. Henry Bowers. Henry Bowers is possessed by Pennywise's influence, rather than simply being a disturbed bully. This theory examines whether Henry's escalating violence throughout both films is purely psychological, or if it actively manipulates him as a proxy to do things the entity cannot. In It, Chapter 2, adult Henry escapes the mental institution where he's been held since killing his father, guided by visions of Pennywise and the corpse of Patrick Hockstetter. The clown appears to Henry multiple times, giving him instructions and weapons, suggesting a direct psychic link. As children, Henry's cruelty mirrors Pennywise's methods, isolating victims through fear and using their specific traumas against them. His attack on Mike at the rock fight becomes supernaturally vicious, and his pursuit of the losers feels compelled rather than motivated by normal teenage aggression. The theory proposes that it recognized Henry's existing violent tendencies and amplified them, making him an extension of the entity's will. This explains Henry's seemingly impossible survival of certain encounters and his ability to track the losers across Derry. He becomes a human manifestation of its hunger, allowed to move in daylight and public spaces where Pennywise must be more careful. Henry's madness might not be mental illness, but the cost of being used as a puppet by a cosmic entity that slowly consumed his mind. The leper disease. Eddie's leper vision represents deeper fears about contamination that connect to repressed sexuality and internalized shame. Throughout the It films, Eddie encounters a diseased homeless man whose face is rotting, who offers him oral sex and threatens to spread infection. This manifestation is uniquely disturbing because it combines multiple taboos, disease, sexuality, homelessness, and decay. The theory argues that it weaponizes Eddie's terror of contamination as a metaphor for how he views homosexuality, having been raised by an obsessively protective mother who taught him the world was full of dangerous germs. The leper represents Eddie's fear of being infected by desires society told him were sick and wrong. His fake asthma and imaginary illnesses were his mother's way of keeping him dependent and afraid, and it exploits this conditioning. The leper's sexual propositions aren't random. They target Eddie's specific anxiety about his feelings for Richie and his terror of becoming something his mother would view as diseased. When Eddie uses his inhaler against the leper, he's symbolically rejecting the idea that he's contaminated or wrong. The manifestation's offer to perform a sex act specifically ties fear of disease to fear of homosexual contact, revealing how deeply Eddie's shame has been programmed. This makes Eddie's eventual acceptance of his feelings and his heroic death a triumph over both Pennywise and the psychological poison his upbringing inflicted. Mrs. Kirsch. Mrs. Kirsch is actually its offspring or mate rather than just another manifestation. When adult Beverly returns to her childhood apartment in It, Chapter 2, she encounters an elderly woman named Mrs. Kirsch, who seems friendly before transforming into a naked, elongated monster. The theory examines evidence suggesting this isn't Pennywise in disguise, but a separate entity connected to the clown. Mrs. Kirsch's transformation is visually distinct from other Pennywise manifestations. She becomes something ancient and witch-like rather than adopting the clown's theatrical style. The painting of Pennywise hanging in the apartment shows the clown in a familial pose, suggesting a relationship. Mrs. Kirsch claims to have lived in the building for years, implying a permanent presence rather than a temporary haunting. Some fans believe she represents its feminine aspect, or a mate the entity keeps in specific locations. Others suggest she's an offspring, one of multiple creatures Pennywise has spawned across Derry over centuries. This would explain why the loser's methods of defeating Pennywise don't seem to affect her, and why she has her own distinct lair separate from the sewers and Neibolt house. If multiple entities exist beyond just Pennywise, it means defeating the clown might not end Derry's curse at all. The projector scene. The projector scene proves it can manipulate technology and potentially exists within electrical systems. During the garage meeting in the first film, the losers review slides of Derry's history when the projector suddenly begins moving through images on its own. Pennywise emerges from the projection, growing larger and more physical until it lunges at the group. This scene raises questions about its relationship with technology. The entity controls a mechanical device, implying it can inhabit or influence machines. Theories suggest Pennywise exists in electrical currents, allowing it to manifest through any powered device. This has terrifying implications for the modern world where technology is everywhere. The slide showing Pennywise wasn't in the carousel originally. The clown inserted itself into the historical record or into the loser's perception of it. Some fans believe it can manipulate photographs and recordings, rewriting history or creating false memories through media. The way the projected image becomes three-dimensional and physical suggests the projector serves as a doorway, with light itself acting as a medium for its manifestation. In It Chapter 2, similar technological manipulation occurs with fortune cookies and other objects, supporting the theory that Pennywise has evolved its hunting methods to exploit 20th and 21st century technology. Chinese restaurant. The fortune cookies at the Chinese restaurant weren't real, and the entire sequence might have been its illusion from the start. When the adult losers reunite at a restaurant in It Chapter 2, they receive fortune cookies that crack open to reveal personalized horrors, eyeballs, insects, a fetus, and a living bird. The theory questions whether any of this was physically real or if Pennywise created a shared hallucination. Other diners in the restaurant don't react to the losers screaming in chaos, suggesting either mass hypnosis or that the group was never actually in the restaurant at all. The waitress who brings the cookies might have been it in disguise, setting the trap. Some versions of this theory propose the restaurant itself was a construct, a memory of a place that no longer exists, used by Pennywise to ambush the losers when they were most vulnerable and newly reunited. The fortune cookie scene serves its purpose perfectly, separating the group psychologically right when they needed unity, making each feel isolated in their terror. The theory examines which parts of the adult timeline might be manipulated, whether Mike's research was influenced, whether their memories of each other are accurate, or if it has been subtly controlling their reunion from the moment they returned to Derry. Quick note, if you're liking what you're hearing, I make videos like this regularly. Subscribing would really help me out. Eddie's inhaler. Eddie's inhaler has actual power despite containing only placebo medication. Throughout both It films, Eddie uses his inhaler as a weapon against Pennywise, spraying it in the clown's face during confrontations. The medication is fake, prescribed by a pharmacist who was in on Eddie's mother's deception, yet the inhaler consistently forces It to retreat. This theory explores how belief makes the inhaler a genuine weapon, connecting to the larger theme that faith gives objects power against the entity. Eddie genuinely believes the inhaler protects him and helps him breathe, so in battles with It, that belief manifests as real power. When Pennywise mocks Eddie's use of gazebos instead of placebos, the clown is acknowledging that the physical contents don't matter, only Eddie's faith in them. This becomes tragically symbolic in It Chapter 2 when Eddie uses a fence post like a giant inhaler, stabbing it through Pennywise's mouth in the same motion he'd used with his medication. His dying act weaponizes the same gesture his mother's manipulation created, transforming a symbol of his weakness into his ultimate act of strength. The theory suggests every loser has similar talismans: Beverly's rock, Bill's bike, Ben's postcard, objects that gain power through emotional significance rather than inherent magic. The painting lady, the flute lady painting in Stan's office, represents his childhood trauma and specific fears about transformation and loss of control. In It Chapter 2, adult Stanley encounters a grotesque woman who emerges from a painting, her body impossibly twisted and elongated. This manifestation is unique to Stan, and particularly disturbing in its presentation. The theory examines why It chose this specific form for Stanley rather than something from his childhood encounters. The painting lady represents Stanley's adult fears about chaos and unpredictability. Everything Stan's ordered, careful life was built to avoid. As a child, Stan was the one who understood the importance of rules and structure, who resisted belief in the supernatural because it violated rational order. The painting lady violates physical laws. Her body bends in ways that shouldn't be possible. She exists both inside and outside the frame, and she's simultaneously art and flesh. This attacks Stanley's need for logical consistency. Some fans connect the flute to musical imagery throughout Stephen King's work, where music represents cosmic forces beyond human comprehension. Others note the painting lady's sexual undertones and suggest she represents Stan's fear of female sexuality or intimacy, connecting to theories about his relationship with his wife and his general anxiety about losing control. Beverly's bathroom. Beverly's bathroom blood explosion was visible only to her, proving that its attacks exist partially in psychological or dimensional space. In the first film, Beverly's bathroom erupts with blood, coating the walls, ceiling, and Beverly herself in massive quantities. When her father enters immediately afterward, the bathroom is completely clean. He sees nothing. This scene is crucial evidence for theories about how It operates. The blood was real to Beverly, she felt it, saw it, was drenched in it, yet it existed in a reality only she could perceive. This suggests Pennywise's manifestations target individuals on a psychic level, creating experiences that are genuine to the victim but invisible to others. It explains why Derry adults never seem to notice the supernatural events traumatizing their children. Each loser experiences individual manifestations their parents can't see, making the children's terror impossible to communicate or validate. The theory has dark implications about isolation, showing how It ensures victims can't get help because their experiences can't be proven. The blood specifically targets Beverly's trauma about menstruation and her father's sexual abuse, using her fear of her changing body and what it might invite. The bathroom becomes a trap where her private terror has no witnesses, exactly how abuse operates in reality, unseen by those who could intervene. Bill's wife. Audra is psychically connected to Beverly, or was targeted by It, before Bill ever met her. In It, Chapter 2, adult Bill is married to an actress named Audra, who bears striking resemblance to Beverly, both physically and in personality. This seems like simple psychology, Bill marrying someone who reminds him of his first love, but some theories suggest something more sinister. Supporters examine whether Bill's choice was influenced by lingering psychic manipulation from his childhood encounter with Pennywise. Perhaps it planted suggestions in Bill's mind, ensuring he'd choose someone who would either make him vulnerable or serve as future leverage. A darker version proposes that Audra was targeted by It, or a connected entity years ago, and her meeting Bill was orchestrated as part of a long game. In the novel, Audra comes to Derry and falls into a catatonic state after encountering It, suggesting vulnerability to the entity's power. The films omit this, but theories speculate whether Audra's absence in It Chapter 2 is protective, or whether she's being used as a hostage to ensure Bill returns. Some fans connect this to how all the losers' adult relationships seem superficial or troubled, suggesting its influence extends beyond Derry, poisoning their ability to form genuine connections as punishment for their resistance. The loser's powers. Each loser has a specific supernatural ability that counters It. Whether they realize it or not, this theory assigns psychic powers to each member of the group, explaining why 7 random children could fight a cosmic entity. Bill possesses voice and narrative control, his stutter representing suppressed power that emerges when he believes in his words, literally able to diminish It by declaring it small and powerless. Beverly has sight. Her encounter with the Deadlights gave her visions of the future, an ability to perceive its true nature. Mike holds knowledge and memory, staying in Derry specifically because he's psychically anchored to the town's history and can access information others forget. Ben channels empathy and emotional connection, his love for Beverly and friendship with the group creating the bonds that keep them linked across decades. Eddie wields faith, his belief in his inhaler and his friends giving him power despite his physical weakness. Richie uses masks and deception, his voices and personas confusing its ability to target his true self. Stanley possesses understanding of cosmic order, his Jewish faith and rational mind giving him insight into rules and patterns that govern reality. Together, their powers complement each other, creating a complete defense that it cannot overcome when they're united. Separated, they're vulnerable, which is why the entity works so hard to isolate and divide them. If you found this interesting, consider subscribing so you never miss new videos. Thanks for watching.